Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me as always I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. In the red corner, the flamboyant flyer and our resident Wikipedia, good brother Flutter. And in the blue corner, even though he's more the Aka Oni, we have the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix. It is January 22nd. Fuck you, it's January. I think this is the last time this week I'll be... Nope, I'll be able to say it one more time next week. But also, how about them Cowboys?
Are they being the Cowboys? Because if it's how about them Cowboys, then I mean they're being the Cowboys.
The play that could have been a turnaround ended up being ruled incomplete because of bad footing.
Oh boy.
I.e. because when the guy caught it, he had the foot off the line.
Ooh.
So, once again, they got beat by themselves.
Yep.
And granted, you also have the fact that Brock Purdy was doing Brock Purdy things, and the Niners' defense is still a shit wrecker. But honestly, this weekend I was more disappointed in the Giants because I felt like my boys lost twice. Because the Giants. Well, what happened to them was what I expected to happen. They managed to beat us, but we were dancing through the raindrops, and then they go up against a real team in the Eagles, and they get completely eaten.
Naturally.
However, we are not here to talk about that.
No.
No, we will probably end up having the debriefing when we do. But for the time being, we are going to be delving into one of the bigger missed opportunities of that early 2000s era of 007 video games. Because as much as people heap all the praise for Goldeneye, which is all right, though anyone trying to get me to play Goldeneye with an N64 controller can get fucked. Give me Goldeneye Source any day of the week. I'm not going back to that abomination of a controller that was the N64 control.
I liked the N64 controller. It was a great weapon.
But oh yeah, we're not talking about our experiences with Mario Party, Zan.
I'm not talking about Mario Party either, Monk. I'm just talking about how great it was that I could harpoon people and bring them back with me. I felt like Scorpion. Besides, during Mario Party, I was the one who won 7 times out of 10, so I was the hated one anyway.
Well, that game is all about being a dick, so match made in heaven.
We'll call it chaos and call it good.
Mm-hmm. However, the early 2000s during the sixth generation were a far more interesting time for James Bond when it comes to video games. Largely because this was a time when there was a significant drought when it came to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it wasn't until the tail end of the 2000s where we started to get more because let me do a bit of checking. So but after The World Is Not Enough, which was PS1 era, there was Die Another Day, which was 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Or not 2000, 2002.
Yeah.
Early thousands.
Mm-hmm. Whereas there are three games that are kind of the holy trinity from 2001 to 2003. That being Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, and Everything or Nothing. All three of those were not based on any existing film,
Correct.
which is what makes them far more interesting. Just that level of creative freedom, and it seems odd to have high praise for an annually released game from EA, but EA in the early 2000s is a very far cry from the EA we know now. They actually
So
that's
it still had its own foibles.
they still had their problems, but their problems were outweighed by what they were actually putting out.
Yeah.
It hadn't gotten as egregious at that point.
right.
Now, of those, Rogue Agent, which came out a year after Everything or Nothing, is considered the black sheep because it was not well received either by fans or by critics. And there's plenty of reasons why. But the premise of it alone, the idea of playing as a Bond villain, is something that was uncharted territory for both 007 and for video games. I mean, you did have the morality system experiment that was going on in RPGs, but generally you were playing as a quote unquote good guy or at worst an anti-hero. But playing as a villain, I know some people will bring up the Team Dark storyline in Sonic Adventure 2, but or playing as the Horde in Warcraft, but you eventually end up saving the world.
Yep.
And
Which is not something that villains typically do.
no, they might do it just for different reasons, but
Yeah.
They'll save the world simply so it doesn't cease existing so they can control it.
Sure.
yeah, there's
You need only look at Robotnik for that.
Yeah.
There's a campaign setting called Necessary Evil for Savage Worlds, which has it that the villains ended up taking out the heroes, and then an alien invasion happens, and the villains end up having to become the heroes because the invaders are going to wreck their shit, and they like the planet Earth. It's where they keep all their stuff.
Like I said, they don't want the world destroyed so that they can continue to control it.
However, now Rogue Agent, first off, the only reason it's called Goldeneye is because the main character is called Goldeneye because he has a golden eye.
It gives him special powers.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the original film or the game. And the funny thing is, calling it Goldeneye was a marketing stunt because somebody walked in on production and said it should be called Goldeneye.
Because apparently marketing doesn't understand that name recognition is a two-way street and a double-edged sword.
And the director of the game was vocally against it because he's saying, and I'm of course paraphrasing, "This is going to fuck us. We've been having technical difficulties with this game, and now you're going to put us against the expectations of one of the most beloved FPSs of the 5th generation."
Like I said, name recognition, dual-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people will go, "Well, how come you have a problem with that? How can you have a problem with that here when you were vocally against the whole thing with Chrono Cross?" Here is the key difference in that. Chrono Cross had its differences by design, which we went over a while back when we did that one episode on Nintendo Direct last year.
Mhm.
But it still had a lot of the DNA of the Chrono series.
And it technically was intended to be somewhat of a sequel with Radical Dreamers connecting the two, which now we have a translated version of Radical Dreamers, again reference to that Nintendo Direct we covered. um so it had the Chrono DNA. It had Luca. It outright had Luca in it. So it's not like it wasn't a part of the Chrono series and specifically a direct sequel to Chrono Trigger. But GoldenEye Rogue Agent is not a continuation or connection to the GoldenEye movie or the GoldenEye story or even the GoldenEye video game, other than being a video game.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
and the justification of a character with a golden eye is not nearly enough.
Yeah,
And it's
Now,
not
what
going to
is
matter because people are going to look at that title and draw their own assumptions, especially in 2005.
yep.
true?
The most I'm going to be probably the most honest assessment here. GoldenEye, the film from the 90s, was the thing that popularized James Bond with an entire new generation.
Mm-hmm.
An entire generation of people who had never seen the Connery or the Roger Moore or anybody prior to Pierce Brosnan as Bond was now enraptured with Bond. And a lot of people went back and watched the older stuff, myself included. And yeah, Bond is kind of campy. It's supposed to be. Pierce Brosnan's Bond was even sort of campy, though a little more suave comparatively. And Daniel Craig's Bond has been honestly too serious for his own good. But that popularization then led to Rare at the time, I believe it was, yes.
Yep, it was Rare.
Who got the license for making a first-person shooter based off of the show for the Nintendo 64. And the popularity of the movie with people who were just discovering Bond, combined with the popularity of video games with people who were just discovering video games. I mean, this was almost a unprecedented perfect storm. Video games were becoming more popular with the young generation. New Bond movie made Bond more popular with the young generation. This was something to capitalize on, and Rare and Nintendo did. And holy shit, did they.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing that idea of a perfect storm forward into a game where that perfect storm is over and the establishment has already been made on both ends, it was a terrible idea.
Oh yeah. Anyway, guys, I'll hopefully be back being called away somewhere else. So
Now, the other thing is, they were kind of screwed over because they were going to be using the same tech as Medal of Honor Rising Sun,
Mm-hmm.
but the Medal of Honor team wanted to do an upgrade, and they weren't able to finish in time. And I don't fault the Medal of Honor team for wanting to do a graphical upgrade because Medal of Honor at that time was looking a bit dated.
Yeah, and well, at this point, Medal of Honor is a forgotten. Nowadays, you see that Medal of Honor has fallen off.
Pretty much. There wasn't when Battlefield 1 came around, that would have been the perfect opportunity to try and bring it back, but c'est la vie.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing now, the big problem with Rogue Agent just as a game is there was one thing that they focused on, and that was the shooting aspect. The problem is there's very little in the way of variety when it comes to that shooting, either narratively or in terms of gameplay. And as far as the whole powers thing from the Goldeneye and all that, a lot of the levels were built around utilizing one power to overcome an obstacle, instead of being able to use them as extensions to create your playstyle.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of games at the time and even now, and whenever you have the whole concept of a shooter with powers, it is meant to be an extension that you utilize to overcome obstacles in a way that you see fit, not as the key to a door in a dungeon.
Hmm.
Uh, consider the let's consider the what let's given that one of the people working on this had also worked on Halo. Let's consider the weapon variety in Combat Evolved.
Okay.
You obviously have the line of UNSC weapons are hit scan, Covenant weapons are projectile.
Hmm.
Even within that, there's a degree of variety within each of those weapons in terms of fire rate, damage, range, and so on. And you have to pick two of that in order to develop a style within it, and constantly shift around. Now, of course, Combat Evolved does have a bad habit of telegraphing certain enemies based on what weapons you're going to find lying around. Like if you find a rocket launcher, you're probably going to be dealing with a ghost or a banshee. I think that's what the tank was in that particular area.
The tank in the Covenant tank.
Yeah,
I think it was called a Wraith.
yeah, Wraith. I don't know why I was thinking banshee. Um,
Banshee was the flyer, and Ghost was the little skimmer.
hmm But you're probably going to be dealing with a Wraith. If you found overshields and a pistol, you're probably going to be dealing with a hunter.
Hmm.
But the fact is, you're utilizing a limited pool to develop a playstyle. But even with that, and this is where we get into the whole 30 seconds of fun thing. Um, the guy at Bungie who made that quote has since talked about how frustrating it is when people bring that up, because because in his mind people misinterpreted it. His whole mindset is you have that 30 seconds and you need to keep making different 30 seconds of fun segments throughout a level.
Hmm.
Like first, let's look at the first chapter in Combat Evolved. On the Pillar of Autumn, you're fighting in confined spaces like you would in Marathon. Then
Yes.
it opens up. Then you start introducing vehicles like the Warthog. Then you start introducing sniping. You know, same controls and all that, different context for all those segments. And you have to keep doing variations therein. Another good example of this variation thing is Arkham Asylum. You have the basics when it comes to free flow and stealth, and then it constantly is adding things to mix up how you're gonna approach it, how you're gonna approach the situation.
Hmm.
Goldeneye, on the other hand, nothing but shooting, and nothing but the same kind of shooting.
Yeah.
Either shooting in corridors and the like, or shooting from a fixed position, a la turrets.
Yeah.
And as good as the shooting may be, the problem is you're doing that for 90% of the game.
Which gets repetitive and boring.
Especially when you can get the reason why something like Doom can get away with so much shooting is through enemy variety. Doom 2 especially, not so much Doom 1, it kind of runs out of its enemy variety pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the other advantage that something like Doom is going to have to increase variety is the way maps are set up. Neither of those Rogue Agent has. So you've got a whole lot of shooting with not a whole lot of variety, and the most optimal strategy is to play the game in a less aggressive manner.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the kind of things that contributes to Rogue Agent feeling very boring in its shooting. Especially since if you're going to do the whole guy with powers thing, you should not be shooting like you're playing Arma. Okay, that's an extreme example, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah, that was a bit of an exaggeration there.
Okay, I guess I was tempted to bring up fear, but I've brought up fear a lot. But just contrast how fear uses the slow-mo. The
Yep.
slow which is certainly good, and part of the reason you need it is because you are constantly outnumbered and being outmaneuvered.
Yep. That reminds me of Max Payne as well with the bullet time.
Mm-hmm.
And you need the bullet time in order to get those shots off in the tight areas that you're always working in.
Especially since depending on your difficulty, you're going to go down easy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's these kind of harmonious things that contribute to the matter. And of course there's the whole thing with narrative where even though they bring in characters from Bond's Rogues Gallery, they're not able to do much. I know some people have derided the story as a glorified fanfic, but fanfics are not the devil that people think. And hopefully later this year we'll be going into detail on that.
Hopefully.
Now, with all of that in mind, the question of why I'd put this up for the reconstruction treatment is quite simple. The idea of playing as a villain in the Bond Rogues Gallery, essentially flipping the 007 concept on its head, I think is far too interesting to pass up. So, with all of that said, let us have a go.
Okay.
So, I will note a few things. One, this would be something like this would be mission based, but a little bit more freeform. The original concept was you were an MI6 agent who got thrown off because he was a bastard. But you don't really get a whole lot more characterization beyond that.
Yeah.
And even if it's supposed to be audience surrogate, if you're gonna do the whole audience surrogate thing, then giving them a backstory is gonna create problems. We've talked about this with the whole thing of characters who are silent protagonists who shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good. The first thing that we'd probably end up starting is the background of our protagonist, which I'm not calling Goldeneye.
I don't think he should be called Goldeneye. I mean, even if he has a technologically golden eye that makes him have special technologically based powers, because they were supposed to be technologically based, that should not be his nickname ever.
As cringe as it may be, I was thinking of going with either 0 or 00.
I don't think calling him 00 or 0 is a good idea because of how close that is to the 00 code numbers of what he was kicked out of.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that anyone he'd be working with on the Rogues Gallery would really want that reminder of MI6. But they would still want a reminder that that he was at once associated with MI6, but now he's made to defeat MI6, or at least, help them avoid MI6, or whatever he's going to be doing. With that in mind, we call him we could call him Double Cross, as in 2 X's. And it also has the double meaning of him having double crossed MI6.
But the central premise that I had in mind is in this case double cross, or for because I'm not paid by the syllable, I'm just going to go with cross.
Okay, also makes sense.
He was an MI6 agent who was far too aggressive in how he handled operations. He
killed too many people.
killed too many people. Acted more like a commando soldier than a MI6 agent.
Mm-hmm.
And was thrown off. Essentially given the equivalent of a burn notice.
Yeah, basically he was abandoned by his intelligence agency and told, "You're done here."
Mm-hmm. And because of him being done, and yes, I will admit I brought up Burn Notice because I loved that show back in the day.
That show is fantastic, especially because it has Bruce Campbell.
Mm-hmm. And he's not even the best part in it, though he is close.
Who's the best part in your mind?
I really liked Weston's quote unquote ex.
Fiona?
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say Fiona. I fucking knew it.
I can't look. Sometimes I have a type.
Yeah, your type is the type that no dick should ever be stuck in, remember?
Yes.
Do not stick your dick in crazy!
No, but they make fine partners in crime.
This is true. This is true.
But the whole thing with it, the whole idea of a burn notice is basically saying that this is an intelligence agent who's unreliable, and you've got nothing. Your accounts are frozen. You're dumped off somewhere, and just told deal with it.
Yeah, you get burned one of 2 ways: fucking up a mission really bad, or your identity is exposed. Mm-hmm. That's primarily what your burned means. Your identity has been exposed.
Yeah, in this case, Cross wasn't burned because of identity exposure. It was because too many casualties.
What's the hold on? An insustainable amount of collateral damage would be the technical military term used.
But the point is the main way that and the only way you're able to make bank afterwards is by going the merc route.
Or the crime route.
But
you're often the same thing.
And that's basically the setup. You are a independent agent taking jobs for the people who you used to be tracking, which allows for a couple things. One, you have the underdog factor, because most of the people that you're going to be working with for the longest time didn't like you because you were fucking up their operations. And two, by being full on freelance, anybody who's willing to pay you, you're willing to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if in a lot of crime fiction stories, we have that person who rises up through the ranks. So
That's our guy.
So we're working with pretty familiar territory. Um, and the other reason I'd go with this is the framing device would not be as tempting as it would be for some to do some open world thing. No, this would be extremely mission based.
Mission based makes sense because a lot of the time with a lot of 007 based games, they're all shooters, which makes sense for the type of fiction it is.
Mm-hmm.
And shooters, open world shooters, are hard to pull off well. So making them more mission based does keep that tight focus of an FPS. Like, you need that tight focus.
FPSs are going to live and die on their mission design,
Mm-hmm.
which is why doing open world with them is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to the rogues gallery you'd interact with, like I said, you are taking jobs on behalf of folk. I think the rogues gallery that was used in the actual game is a good starting point at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Scaramanga, Oddjob, Goldfinger, Dr. No, Blofeld, Pussy Galore, and Xenia Onatop.
Now, I will note that some of these characters seem more fit as lieutenants than actual leaders,
Mm-hmm.
which leads us to another thing we can have in there. And lieutenants could possibly join Cross on on particular missions depending on what the goal is.
Yeah.
But these are all criminals, or at least underbelly elements of the world. This doesn't mean they're always going to be working together. Not only would you have the issue of, MI6 being against all of these people, and thus, MI6 is always a threat, but you could have clashing heads between them.
Which is why not necessarily a faction system, but a reputation system is something I would use in this. Essentially, how well you're able to work with these different individuals, and if playing your cards right, have them work against each other.
Mm. I'd also like to note that with all of these elements in mind, while we do want this to be strictly mission based, I think it should be sort of a choose your own.
That's the kind of thing I was thinking in a tiers and tent poles manner.
Yeah.
I.e., you have two types of missions. There's the free form ones, which you can take in any order, and there's the tentpole ones that are the ones that are going to advance whatever story we'd have, and those ones would end up spawning a whole new set of freeform ones.
Yeah, and I think that depending on your reputation, the story missions and the freeform missions that you have available are going to change.
Yes. The other thing. Now, when it comes, the other thing that is crucial with this is that mission variety would be absolutely paramount. Some missions might be full on shootouts if it's a raid.
Mm-hmm.
But just as much of them maybe assassination, maybe B&E, maybe the whole planting a bomb.
Healing intelligence.
Yeah. I.e., just as much stealth as there is shooting.
And I think that again, with our factions and their representatives, you can sort of see a centralization of the types of missions they might offer. Mm-hmm. Like, honestly, what types of missions is Onatop going to give? Consider her character. Consider how she acts.
But you want to talk about not sleeping with crazy? There you go.
Exactly. She'd probably be your assassinations and your straight on like knockdown drag out raids.
Well, let's go from the list and what sort of missions they might either offer or be associated with.
Mhm.
Um, I'm leaving one out because I have something in mind for that. But we'll start with Scaramanga.
I'm going to say propaganda and scare tactics.
Okay,
Just think about it.
I'm guessing in that case it'd be an instance of launch of staging an attack, but making it look like someone else did it.
That's one way, or planting intelligence where others can find it to make a threat seem like there is coming from somewhere else or there is none. So, you have the stealth stuff.
Yeah. Now, what's your reasoning for that with Scaramanga?
Uh, hold on. The fact is, Scaramanga was an assassin, but he was a very... I guess what's the best way for me to say this? He was an agitator. He tried to get a
Yeah, wasn't his whole thing of getting tech for solar power so he could sell it to the highest bidder?
yeah, and then he also terrorized Bond by giving him a gold bullet with 007 on it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, scare tactics and propaganda with maybe a little bit of sabotage.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he would give out assassination missions because Scaramanga is an assassin. He'd do it himself.
Mm-hmm. And one with, I know somebody would say, well, why doesn't he just shoot you if you're in the same business? He's not getting paid.
Yeah, Scaramanga, top dollar. You pay top dollar for Scaramanga.
There's a reason in the song it says he charges $1 million a shot.
I mean, for a gold bullet, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But Oddjob has been a lieutenant when he's shown up, and I'd say that kind of thing is how he would work here.
Yeah, I don't think he would really offer many missions. If he did, it'd be like an intermediary for Goldfinger, since he was a henchman to Goldfinger in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Oddjob would mostly just be a lieutenant. He wouldn't offer many jobs, or if he did, they'd be jobs that Goldfinger is too important to hand out himself.
Yeah.
Or jobs that Goldfinger... the jobs are less important than Goldfinger. Goldfinger is doing something more important elsewhere.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Goldfinger.
You see, now this one's really good. It's going to be stealing, absolutely. I mean, and then definitely sabotage, considering what he tried to do with fucking Fort Knox. But I think there would also be a little bit of assassination from him, just to get some unnecessary elements out of the way of his big plans. Which also means to me that a lot of his stealing would be stealing intelligence more than actual items, though you might steal something made of gold for him every so often as well. Because, it's fucking Goldfinger.
Mm-hmm. Dr. No.
Okay. So this is a harder one, to be honest. Because Dr. No, you kind of have to. Dr. Julius No is the quintessential mad scientist. He's a guy that's trying to. I can't even say this. A radio beam weapon. He's trying to stop space launches with a radio beam weapon. But essentially, Dr. No is your quintessential mad scientist. Which means he's probably not going to have a lot of funds since he's a known mad scientist. And his things are going to be raids on places where there are a lot of weapons to either destroy the weapons because he can't have them, or take specific things from them to use for his mad science.
Or things that will allow him to get the funds to get stuff for his experiments. I'd also probably say that if there's anybody who is going to give you the enhancements, it's him. And it doesn't have to be a Goldeneye, but he is giving you giving you some enhancements to your abilities.
Well, yeah, and I think that his would be the most like mad science enhancements of some sort. But I think that there would be potentials for upgrades, for lack of a better word, from all of the factions for performing specific missions, whether it's better guns or maybe different traversal methods like a grappling hook, or shortcuts in missions that weren't there before because now you've opened up something due to your connections.
Yeah. And I do. Now, the last two, Pussy Galore and Xenia Onatop, both of them were lieutenants, and I'd say they act in a similar manner here.
Yeah, again, passing down, passing down missions from their more important bosses or accompanying you on missions. Now, I noticed that the person you did skip over that you wanted to save for special is Blofeld.
Yes.
Because, well, Blofeld's the head of fucking Spectre.
And a mindset that I have is as you are doing better, you may be able to access Spectre missions, which would be the equivalent of hard mode missions, or the like, where they are very difficult, very dangerous, but the rewards are a lot bigger.
Yep. Our quintessential high risk, high reward that we love so much. And honestly, I think the reason they're so challenging is they'd be proving grounds as well.
Yeah.
Blofeld is testing you. Whether you realize it's a test or not, it's all tests. And sure, you get some extravagant rewards out of it. I can imagine some of the rewards from these Spectre contracts would be entirely new, like, kits. Yeah. Not just one upgrade here or there, but like, oh, you beat this challenge? Here, we're going to give you the Riot Assaulter kit. Gives you, like, extra body armor, some heavy weapons, grenades and shit, so that when you go into Riot type missions, raid and Riot type missions, you go in and you're just fucking tearing shit up.
And I should note that I don't want to say we'd go RPG elements with this, because I fucking hate that term. But much like what we talked about when it came to Alpha Protocol, I would take the approach of having you set up mission kit before going out into the field, and as you're developing, that kit is expanding.
For those of you who have played the Sniper Elite series of games, this is similar to that, because you can get different types of rifles, different types of support items, different types of grenades, different types of sidearms, and change your kit at the beginning of every mission there. I'm only saying similar because the idea is similar. The actual execution would probably be much different. I imagine that with this game,
significantly wider, because you're dealing with both full-on combat, stealth, and in between.
Yeah, and I think with that, we also have to allow for a higher amount of customization to allow different gameplay opportunities in the same mission. Say that we're on a raid mission. Raids are commonly knockdown, drag out fights, but there's gonna be ways to stealth through them. And if you build your kit out right, you could probably stealth through a raid to get the objective without having to fire a shot.
And I would know the key thing and the reason why we'd go with missions is much like certain immersive sims. The idea is there are multiple ways that you can accomplish the mission. It's just some of them are going to be safer, quote unquote, than others.
Some of them are going to be more secure or more of a guarantee than others. But because of that, I think that's why the customization needs to be so deep. Mm-hmm. Those of you who have come to the GeekWatch long enough know that we love customization when implemented correctly.
Yes.
And in this case, it's no different. I think that this is one of those games where you don't have the character holding every gun. This isn't an arcade shooter that we're developing now.
No, you would. I'm not gonna say you'd have the two weapon limit, but you wouldn't have all of the weapons.
Yeah, and I think what weapons you would have would change depending on kit. Like if you're going for a high stealth kit, you're going to be carrying less guns due to weight and sound than if you're going for a raid or rioting kit, so that you're covered in armor and weapons. Just so you survive and take out as many as you can. Mm-hmm. So, kit variety is going to be big, and like I said, Spectre missions, their rewards are likely going to be extremely valuable kit options or entire kits themselves, which is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah,
and again, the reputation is going to come into play with this. Like, if your reputation with Dr. No is low, he's going to tell you to fuck off. You're not getting anything from him. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get any actual scientific. Even if we did implement this stupid Goldeneye into this, you're not going to get that from him unless you've got a high reputation with him.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
And if I'm being honest, the way that reputation would be lowered, as tempting as it would be that failed missions would lower reputation, I don't like that approach. I would much rather that your reputation lowers based on the missions you don't take.
Well, I think it should be three-pronged. Failing a mission should result in some loss of reputation with the people you took the mission with. That should just be one of the penalties. Now, I don't think that we should make missions one and done. Like, if you die on the mission, that's a failure and now you lose everything. I think it should either be based on a few retries or based on whether the actual mission goal is lost. Because if you die in mission, you just, in every other GoldenEye or in every other 007 game, you just start the mission over or start from a checkpoint. Mm-hmm. Like, you could say that we have the one and done mission structure for a super hardcore mode or something, but that's a different topic entirely and not exactly relevant to what's being discussed now. But that's the first one. That's like the first prong. You lose a little bit of reputation if you fail a mission with the people you took the mission from. I think the second one is what missions you didn't take before moving on. And I think the third one should be if you take a mission that explicitly pits two factions against each other, and you're taking the side of one of them. Because you're going to piss off the other faction by foiling them.
Yeah. Especially since I'd say as this kind of thing goes forward, some of the missions you take are going to be situations where you're helping one employer and screwing over another.
For example, both Dr. No and Orc Goldfinger are aiming for the same technological device for different reasons. Choose who you're going to help.
Mm-hmm. And whoever you end up helping, well, it's going to screw over the other person, and they're going to have issues. Now,
and they're going to know it was you, unless That now puts into perspective the whole stealth thing. Unless you could do a perfect stealth run where nobody ever sees you.
And I would say you have a decent design trinity with just Scaramanga, Goldfinger, and Dr. No.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I would say if your reputation is low enough, then one of the lieutenants might come after you, i.e., Oddjob, Pussy Galore, or Xenia. But it would be the equivalent of a mini boss, not a full.
Some sort of wild card fight in the middle of in the middle of your missions.
Yeah. There is one other wild card that we discussed that I definitely would put in, and that is Bond himself.
Yep.
Now,
good old 007.
The way that I would use him is akin to Big Daddy in BioShock.
You can face him down or you can run, but if you face him down, you got to do it in a way that isn't head on.
Mm-hmm. If you try and take him on in a head-on fight, you're going to lose.
Bond's just too good for that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you do take him on and win, it's not like you actually won. You just delayed him for so long that he has to pull out before he fails whatever mission he's on.
Mm-hmm.
Or he delayed you long enough that whatever his goals were achieved. So he's like, okay, I'm gone now. Bye.
Yep.
The other wild card I want to throw in, because I think it would be awesome, is Jaws.
Yeah, I didn't want to use Jaws as a mission contact, because I feel like Jaws should be one of those types who is very difficult to overcome.
Well, difficult to overcome if you have to fight him. But I also think that depending on the mission you're taking, he also becomes an ally.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily because, I mean, he worked for a lot of different people. I mean, he worked for Carl Stromberg in The Spy Who Loved Me.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for Hugo Drax in Moonraker. In the video game Everything or Nothing, he worked for Nikolai Diavolo. So, Jaws is as much a free agent as Cross would be.
And in fact, could be seen as your foil in that regard.
Absolutely.
And because of this setup, you could have a situation where you have to deal with both Bond and with either Jaws, Galore, or Oddjob.
Mm-hmm.
Even
on the top.
Mm-hmm. Depending on how you deal with situations, which could make things even more interesting for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that if you're able to at the very least hold your own against Bond or Jaws, that's one way that you could gain reputation with Spectre.
I could see that.
Because if you're able to give them trouble, then that's going to be of interest to them. And I know that Dr. No had worked with Spectre, and we're having him as an independent in this.
Well, Dr. No worked with them, but he wasn't part of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
whereas a lot of these tests are to see if you're a good enough candidate to actually join.
Yeah, these Spectre tests are to see if you join. And I imagine if you complete enough of these Spectre challenges, we would have another story path that goes with Cross eventually joining Spectre.
Mm-hmm. much like how some of the Souls games have that one ending that you can take if you really go out of your way to do it. Even if that ending is horrible, looking at you, frenzied flame. Where
Go out of your way to do Frenzied Flame. Yes, that's a terrible ending.
I'd honestly say it's even worse than the Blessing of Despair.
The Cursed Blessing ending, yes. But yeah, I think that with this in mind, we actually have a really good framework. We've got customization, we've got mission variety, but also playstyle variety within missions. We've got a varied cast. We've got our rival slash primary obstacle, in Bond and Jaws. But also Jaws can sometimes be an ally if you're on the right side on the right mission. All of a sudden Jaws shows up to help you. I could see in some cases that if Bond showed up in that mission as well, Jaws would hold him off while you get the hell out.
Now, as far as what the final act would be, if I'm being honest, there is one place from the game that would be perfect for that kind of final act affair.
Mm-hmm.
That being the octopus.
Okay.
That big ass underground casino.
That makes sense. I mean, it's a huge underbelly of the underworld. So, and it.
I think that the way that it goes about is going to be dependent on whose reputation you have the highest with.
Yeah, because all three of them would be going into that casino for various reasons. Mm-hmm. And Spectre would be going into that casino because they're Spectre. I mean, I don't think I have to say more than that.
I'd say Spectre would... The approach that I'm going with is there is... For each faction, there is something valuable enough to go down to this underwater casino. And I think what it is going to depend on who you have the highest reputation with. I'd say with Scaramanga, it's the vault, and just with the sheer amount of money that's in that, this would be the payday of the century.
Yep.
Or rather him using that as a distraction to do an assassination job of his own and get paid.
Yep.
With Gold, what would you say the reason to go into the if I recall from the game, Goldfinger was the one who owned the casino.
Think that was the case? I haven't played it in forever.
Let me I'd have to double check. I would have to double check, but if it is him, then it's a case of there's a bunch of people who you've worked with who are going to be at this casino. I need you to do bodyguard duty.
I need you to keep the casino from getting fucked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be a protect mission almost.
Yeah. And in the case of Dr. No, it would be a theft.
Yeah. There's something down there that makes this casino so viable underwater, and he wants the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my plan for the Spectre version of the mission. I would call this mission. I would give the mission the title of "Winner Takes All" for one, because it's a casino.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be, it's going to have all the classic Bond elements that you come to expect from someone going to a casino in a Bond movie. You're going to have the high stakes game against 007, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to beat him. You have to beat him, or it's a mission failure. You're going to convince Goldfinger to give over his ownership of the casino to Blofeld and Spectre. No strong arming or extortion here. I don't know what I was saying. You're going to steal the technology that Dr. No wants for Blofeld's uses. And you're going to empty the vault and kill the assassin target that Scaramanga wants before Scaramanga can. It is a combination of all the elements plus a showdown with Bond. And thus, winner takes all.
Mm-hmm. That being your final test, and I'd say when it comes to how each of these stories would end, I'd say with Scaramanga, you'd end up having your own spot on his particular island. Just as long as you do a few jobs in the interim, you won't have to pay rent for the place.
Mm-hmm.
With Goldfinger, you're basically his newest lieutenant.
Yep, you're his right-hand man.
Mm-hmm. And with Dr. No, I'd say he ends up making you into what could be considered the perfect soldier.
He's like,
you're his perfect mercenary that he can give out to the highest bidder.
Yeah, Dr. No's ending is going to be bad for Cross. He's proved himself so many times and done so many things for No. Dr. No says, I'll give you the best enhancement yet. And then you lose your free will and mind and become a perfect super soldier that follows orders.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's Dr. No, and he's a mad scientist. Yes, we are leaning hard into that. I know Dr. No had more nuance in the movies. I don't give a fuck. And in the books. He had a lot more nuance in the books, too.
Yeah. But a lot of his stuff is on that mad scientist kick, and is very much about advanced tech, or
Mm-hmm.
at the very least weird tech.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can get away with the whole radio waves thing during a time when people didn't have a big understanding of how radio waves worked.
Yes. Nowadays, radio waves might still work during a launch, but only to disrupt communications and certain automated elements. And even if that were the case, they just not ignite the boosters and delay the launch of the rocket.
Mm-hmm.
But, and of course, joining Spectre, since you've passed your final Spectre, but with that sort of high marks, you got all the things for Blofeld. You're not just going to be a Spectre grunt. You're joining some part of the inner circle of Spectre at that point.
You're essentially the end of the Spectre storyline would be you essentially on the same tier as the same villains that you've been working with and have been paid by.
Yeah, you've become, while not the biggest boss, because Blofeld and Spectre always was the biggest boss until he was unceremoniously dropped down a chimney by George Lazenby. There are the masters and then the masters in the shadows. Blofeld is the master in the shadow. The other big bads are the alleged masters of their own domains. But you, having actually been inducted into Spectre and being at that level, gives you just that little bit more of an edge.
Which is why a good scene to kind of end that with would be one of the others, say Goldfinger, getting a call that call is giving him orders. And obviously he was like, who the hell are you to boss me around? And then one of his buildings ends up blowing up. And the I should note the other person in this call is obviously modifying
Their voice.
their voice, but on the other end it's Cross saying it would be saying if I heard that you just had an explosion. It's a pity that I'm sure you should be plenty motivated to deal with things now. Not in those exact wordings, but basically the explosion was meant to be a threat, i.e. I'm not asking you to do this for me.
This isn't a request. This is an order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you
No,
if you want to get smart with me again, well another one of your buildings can get blown up.
Well, it'd be even funnier if you said, if you're not so I'm sure you have the proper motivation now, but if you're still uncooperative, there's always someone else to take your place.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, would scare the shit out of even a kingpin like Goldfinger.
Yeah, especially since building a whole building doesn't just blow up like that.
And especially without having noticed anyone going and doing anything suspicious, which, as we've been building Cross in the game, he probably has the skills to do that if he needs to. He didn't even have to ask Grunts to do it. He went and did it himself because he knows how to get the job done.
The whole thing that's so scary about, say, about Alec and Goldeneye is a rival with the exact same skills.
Yeah, when 006 faked his death. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Cross by this point, he is somebody who has all of the skills of an MI6 agent, has plenty of experience as a mercenary and independent businessman, and has the knowledge of how the criminal underworld works.
Yep. And then specifically with the Spectre recruitment, he's also been acknowledged by the largest dark organization in the world as someone valuable, skilled, and reliable.
Mm-hmm. And I should note throughout it, the attitude that everybody has regarding Spectre is treating them as the open secret. Everybody knows about them, and everybody's stupid enough to say, if you even get close to their business, get the fuck out.
Yep.
Essentially treating them as they've kind of always been, as the underworld's boogeyman.
I mean, that's why their name is Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
They are the shadow in the night, ready to to kill you.
Because even as big as all these different folks in that organization are, or in the criminal underworld are, there's always that bigger fish. There's always that rule of there's somebody who they are scared of.
There's always somebody stronger.
Mm-hmm. And I should note when it comes to the gameplay setup, a lot of the stuff that were attempts to innovate. Some of them might be keepable, and some of them wouldn't. Dual wielding, I'm not going to lose sleep if we lose dual wielding, because
it's not really necessary.
And if I'm being honest, there's not a whole lot of games that I feel have done dual wielding right. I know a lot of people will bring up Halo 2, but if I'm being honest, the the combos that you would viably do dual wielding with aren't all that many.
Plasma pistol and SMG for quick kills, or dual needlers, because that's fucking broken. That's really it.
Yeah.
Well, no, dual SMG sometimes. If you could get in close enough with dual SMG, you could mow a person to nothing.
Mm-hmm. But I feel that dual wielding should only be used if it adds a new avenue to your approach.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
And if I'm being honest, a lot of times dual wielding is just used as being able to do more bullets. And as much as I hate to admit it, this is where I would give I would say that Skyrim has better dual wielding than some shooters, because the disadvantage with dual wielding in something like Skyrim is you can't block. That is the closest thing to a nice thing I will say about Skyrim.
I'll say a nice thing about Skyrim. Mods make it better.
Low bar, but true.
And it's easy to mod, since they've never changed the engine for nearly 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Gamebryo 3 engine, I hope you die.
And I know that I hope to God they actually do some better engine with Starfield. Otherwise, they're in for a world of pain.
I hope that it's a new engine, but we know it's Bethesda. It's probably not.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they can. I would make a joke about borrowing id Tech, but that wouldn't be a good idea either. Because it'd be like you're using a system that is specifically designed for very controlled areas, and then trying to open it up. I'm getting the strangest case of Dijon mustard right now.
Yeah.
I can't possibly think of another EA game that tried to use an engine that it was not designed for and failed miserably. No, not at all.
I don't know what you're talking about, Monk. I have no idea.
But I'm pretty sure your face is tired from hearing it.
Something like that. Just a little.
A little bit. But I do think that instead of dual wielding, that's the kind of thing that should be reserved for ADS. And I know a lot of people hate iron sights. I don't hate iron sights myself. What I hate is when iron sights are necessary because hip fire is so inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
The approach I would take is that iron sight is first off locked to weapons that actually have a scope. There's no reason to do iron sights with, say, SMGs.
Yeah, they're not meant to. They're supposed to be accuracy by volume. They're suppressive fire.
Yeah. And irons. Things like combat rifles and sniper rifles would be the only time you'd use it. For everything else. Actually, here's an idea that I have. The choice of weaponry that you have is going to determine your mobility. If you've got pistols or SMGs, you're able to move around pretty easily. But you're not gonna have that much. You're gonna need a whole lot more bullets to take out certain enemies. But if you're bringing heavier stuff like say sniper rifles or full on assault rifles, or even LMGs for some of those raiding jobs.
Yep.
Then you can do that, and I'd say the only time that I would allow for full-on dual wielding is certain builds with your upgrades, like a strength build where you're able to bring um bring in dual assault rifles, or at its peak dual LMGs. Uh, because I'd say, since we have this trinity, I'd say the builds would be on three trinities. Um, I would say one of them is your assault build. This is fast and accuracy by volume kind of
Yep.
builds.
Yep.
Then you have your assassin build, which is going to be for the people who like sneaking. And the third one is what I'm going to call the brawler build, until I can find a better name. This is where you put things like shotguns and rocket launchers.
Okay, I can see that.
Uh, and I know I called these builds, but I wouldn't want them to be limited the same way classes are in Battlefield. It's more
Yeah,
of
it's mix and match.
you bring these kind of things in to do the mix and match. Um, stuff like the railgun that can go through walls. That's the kind of equipment I would say would be exclusive to Spectre. Because the whole idea with the Spectre missions is by taking on these higher ranking missions, you're getting rewarded with powerful equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why if you went the full Spectre route in this scenario, the weapons that you would have weaponry that could outclass just about anybody. Though in this kind of scenario, would you include different types of grenades?
Yes, but only a few.
I'm thinking frag, smoke. I'd say chaff.
Yeah, the four I was thinking were frag, smoke, chaff, and flashbang.
What would be the advantages and disadvantages of flashbang versus smoke in this particular case?
Smoke is silent. A smoke grenade you just throw, and then the smoke is slowly filtered out. And so it's better for a stealthy approach to get past things.
Mm-hmm.
Flashbang is a disrupted. I'd find it to be more a brawler build based thing, because it would be used to, say you're skirmishing, you get to a place where you're just trying to get past a choke point or something, and it's just a couple guys in that choke point. So you throw the flashbang into disorient, take them out quick, and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't really want to frag for that, because the choke point's a small space. Frags are for breaking up large enemy groups.
The other thing I'd say is that there is a bit of multi-purposeness, like using a smoke grenades to set off the smoke alarm in an area.
Yeah, you could do that as well.
Which would be a good way to go if you're taking the stealth approach.
Mm-hmm.
I know some might say that this is leaning a little bit close to Hitman, but if you're gonna steal from the best. But Hitman was extremely doubling down on stealth.
Mm-hmm.
Much in the same way Thief doubles down on stealth, but this hypothetical wouldn't be doing that. It would be one of the pillars.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple types of missions that you're going to be doing, and because of that, you're not going to be using one particular kit at the same time every mission. Sometimes you might need to go with the stealthier approach, and to that end, I would not go with any sort of attachments system when it comes to your weapons.
Hmm.
So I'd there's so in the case of pistol, you'd have different variants of pistol. A standard one, probably one that's an automatic with an extendo mag, and one that has a suppressor. And I would say for each weapon type, there is a Spectre variant.
Which, while may be the best for a specific type of role, isn't necessarily the best weapon outright. I don't think
Yeah,
we should make Spectre variants just the best. Period.
no, but they do have an edge up. I would I would say if using this kind of thing, the the pistol weapons you have would be a standard 9 mil. Um,
Hmm.
in fact, I'd say most of these would be firing 9 mil ammo, but just your standard Glock or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, probably not Makarov because that's another different type of 9 mil. Uh, the trying to think what would be a good model to build a machine pistol around, which is exactly what it would sound like. You've got more bullets and it's got full auto, but it's not as it's not going to be as accurate.
Yep. I'm
Uh,
not sure what we would build that around.
yeah, but you know what I mean by a machine pistol, so you know where that kind of thing's going.
Yes. Yes, I do. I do know about a machine pistol. Quite a few different machine pistols.
Hmm. And the Spectre variant would be I'm blatantly ripping off Titanfall with this, but the smart gun. The smart pistol would be the Spectre variant of a pistol with a lock-on system.
Hmm.
Uh, and when and this kind of trinity applies to a lot of what would be the standard firearms. So assault rifles, sniper rifles, rocket launchers. I would say the Spectre variant for a grenade would be a would probably be some sort of drone.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. It would change the dynamic entirely.
Yeah, it's essentially a drone that has Overwatch over an area.
Mhm. The big thing is that with the Spectre variants, they're going to put a small amount of a paradigm shift on your gameplay experience.
Hmm. None of these Spectre variants are better. Just different avenues that you can't access otherwise. Because given their nature, even the grunts of that organization are going to be a cut above the standard grunts of any other criminal.
Hmm.
And I would say in regards to that, I think that in addition, would you have some degree of gadgetry the same way that's been in the 007 games proper, or do you think that that a lot of the gadgets that could be used would be too specific?
I think a lot of the gadgets that could be used would be extremely specific, since they're made very, very quirkily by Q, thus the Q in his name. But I do think that gadgetry would still be a thing if you work with specific factions.
Hmm.
Like, you would probably get the most gadgetry working with Doctor No. But
Mhm.
there'd be opportunities for some gadgets elsewhere.
Yeah, like we already mentioned the possibility of a grappling hook. I do think that it could be a mix of gadgetry that you can use as well as gadgetry that maybe drops. Because one idea I was considering is the notion of a of being able to use your reputation to make sure that there are some dead drops that can help you,
Mm.
i.e. a firearm that's in a convenient package spot,
Mm-hmm.
or special ammo that's conveniently placed because of your connections. I think we talked about that with Alpha Protocol, but there's going to be a lot of overlap in that because of the whole um ta- um taking the approach to taking the approach in of different ways into a given mission.
Mm.
And when it comes now given our enjoyment when it comes to guns, um what sort of variants would you utilize when it comes to the a shotgun given the trinity we've built?
Um. Hmm.
I would say a double barrel is the brawler build.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that any of the shotguns that would be taken would be so limited. Um. I think we'd be looking at different variants of tube-fed magazines. Specifically because Cross isn't going to take like a lot of the weapons taken are going to be efficient for the mission. He's very mission focused. So I think for the brawler build he's going to use what was the name of this gun? I think it was a let me look this up real quick.
Why am I thinking of a Saiga 12?
The Saiga 12 would be the assault build. There is it the Mossberg 500 I'm thinking of? No, there's a for the brawler build. I'm thinking of a pump shotgun that is forget the name right now, but it's a shorter barrel because it's meant for closer engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a longer barreled shotgun. The Mossberg 590 SP. That's what I'm looking at here. It also technically has a handle for pumping on it, but it's a smaller form factor. It's a 12 gauge shotgun. Instead of having a normal like 20-inch barrel, it's only 18.5. And it would be good for close in blasting people out of your way in tighter areas. The Saiga 12 would be your assault variant because it's technically it's a magazine fed semi-automatic shotgun, and it's pretty reliable. And then I think the Spectre variant is going to probably be the KSG. Lots of shells. That's the most shells ever. You have 2 magazine tubes, so you can load up 2 different types of ammo.
The KSG 12.
Yeah, the KSG.
Well, I did say that if you want to take notes for futuristic weapons, then steal notes from Caltech. The troll part of my brain wants to say that it's a working version of the Pancor jackhammer would be the Spectre variant, but
Well, the reason I'm going with the KSG is, frankly, with 2 magazine tubes, you can hold multiple shot types, and you can switch between them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you just have more shot. Period. It makes for a much more tactical shotgun than either of the two we've spoken about.
Yeah, and part of me also wants to say that this would be the only one that would have dragon's breath ammo.
Sure, shock it all, bitches. Kaboom!
Um, when it comes to the variants for say a sniper rifle, um, that one might be a bit tricky. I do think that the brawler build would be full on 50 BMG.
So we're gonna put in the most popular 50 BMG, the Barrett M82A1.
Yeah,
Okay.
as the brawler build. The thing to note is assault build is about mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Assassin build is all about precision. Brawler build is all about power.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said the Saiga 12 would be on the assault build, because it gives you a semi-automatic magazine-fed shotgun that is all about, well, staying mobile and shooting.
Yeah.
Whereas the Mossberg that I mentioned is since it's shorter, it's got more power when you're up close, like a brawler would be.
Mm-hmm. That's not to say all the brawler weapons would be up close, but it's either, but they all are about dealing heavy amounts of damage and making a lot of noise.
Yep. But this means we also have an assassin variant sniper rifle as well. So for the assault variant sniper rifle, since it's focusing on mobility and you want something that's easy and quick to move with, you know, I'm not so sure on that one.
On what the assault build, what a
Assault variant sniper rifle would be for, yeah. What it would be.
I would say the assault variant would probably be one that can be requires the least amount of setup.
Okay.
So a rifle that could be, even if it's not going to have rate of fire, could be hip fired far more easily than anything else.
Which is asking for a lot with any sniper rifle, but I won't get into that. I can't really think of one for assault. Not myself, at least.
Yeah, and if worst comes to worst, we could make one up as we go. I'd say I do. Actually, what about the green meanie?
Okay. Sell me on it.
I mean I'd say that's a pretty reliable one to utilize.
Yeah, the L96A1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see it.
And as far as I'd say the precision assassin one is going to be the easiest to work with, because the tricky thing with something like sniper rifle is that any sniper rifle could be considered an assassin build if you look at it a certain way.
Yeah. But if you really want an assassin build sniper rifle, you want one of the rifles used here in Texas at some of the very long distance Texas ranges that have targets over a mile away. Commonly featured on channels such as Texas Plinking. Yes, I'm going to plug him because he's fantastic and doesn't have enough people watching him. But there are sniper rifles that can hit very accurately and touch you from over a mile away. So.
Yep, and I just found his channel, and I'll be keeping an eye on this for research, since I like using firearm channels to get ideas.
He even has his own website too.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So here we go. Here we go. We're gonna the Chaytac M200 intervention, chambered in either 408 or 375, hitting targets at distances of up to 5,000 meters. And this is just from his website.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know why I'm talking about him.
Yeah, as far as the Spectre variant, I would say this is where you put in the railgun.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
I agree 100%.
Because with doing a railgun in this sense, the approach it would have is that is long range, can go right through walls, but it's unsuppressed. In other words, the on one side, anything hit by it is going to go down. On the downside, everybody's going to know that something just went off.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say it would be funny if for one particular mission you're stuck with, say, a high point.
I would not do that. I would rather say that you're stuck with a combat knife because all your gear got taken and you have to go retrieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck a high point. I would rather not have a gun, Monk. I would rather not have a gun.
About a year ago, I actually got the chance to fire a high point.
I'm sorry.
And you know how when Demo Rants was doing a test with one of those, and he had to hold the thing literally upside down to get the thing to fire without getting the cartridge jammed.
Because he had been
the shell jammed.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that it's because he was using an extendo mag.
No, it was because he kept dirtying them up. It was part of the test.
Yeah, it was part
of the torture tests.
But even with that, it only was able to hit something when you throw it.
Yes, I remember. High points are the definition of caveat emptor.
Mm-hmm. And for me, when I tried it, it was a case of every other shot something went wrong, and it had to be put down and see what the hell just happened.
Yep. Tolerances on high points are not very high, ironically.
Because I was about to fire again, and it's like slide's not moving. So we put it down. The slide, either the slide got stuck or a shell didn't eject properly. Just something would always happen.
Yeah. So no high point.
And afterwards, I said, can I just throw it? So he takes the mag out. Make sure that the chamber's empty. I pick the thing up and I throw it overhead like it was a boomerang.
That's about all a high point deserves. But a bit rails there,
yeah,
Monk.
A bit rails, but I have to take an opportunity to pick on high point.
Until until your gun design our beatings will continue until gun design improves. There we go.
Yes. But I do think when it comes to gadgets, I'd say some of the ones that I have in mind that could be used are obviously a grappling hook, which in order to get around the problem of how would you utilize a grappling hook aside from set piece moments, well, the answer is simple. we've all played Mortal Kombat, right?
Get over here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an even simpler response though. All of us have played Arkham Asylum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just about every edge is grappleable.
Yeah, I don't think I would go that route, but going the route of ya- of yanking people about or yanking their guns. That would be a more effective use. Or if you're doing a brawler build, use it to more easily get in close.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, optic camo is another one that can be utilized. Um, probably some degree of traps, because everybody likes a trap where you step on the wrong spot and then you get electrocuted.
Yep.
Um, I would. I think in I already mentioned I already mentioned the whole thing with drones, but but I'd say another potential angle with gadgets is some sort of localized radar.
Yeah,
I mean,
I could see that.
UI radars are I've been even by that point were an established thing. But I think utilizing a more localized radar, so so you have a better chance of spotting when somebody's behind you,
Mm-hmm.
is one approach. And hell, we already have a foundation for that because System Shock did it.
Yep.
Uh, I'd also the possibility of zooming and marking targets is one other potential.
All AR then.
And I'd
Augmented reality.
another one is um not just radio jamming, but faking radio commands.
So that you can intercept and otherwise distract, yeah.
In or to essentially they're using a voice modulator, for instance, to imitate a commander's voice, and then utilize that to give fake orders,
Mm-hmm.
or say that there's an intruder in a place where there actually isn't.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Practical gadgets.
yeah, truth be told, you could go through the gadget list in Rainbow Six Siege and grab a bunch of ideas.
Yeah. Like I said, practical gadgets.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't be opposed to somebody using impact grenades in that situation. You know, throw a grenade at a wall, create a big hole, use that hole to shoot.
Yep.
Or if somebody really wants to be fun and you want to play a bit more defensive, I always liked the EDD, entry denial device.
Yeah. Take a while to tear them down too.
Mm-hmm. And you get somebody to go into the right corridor, and then they're not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout this, we have a situation where we have our golden triangle, which is always important. We have the way that you'd go about it, and I still wouldn't have it be 90% shooting. If you want to do the vehicle segment, or say the tank segment from one of the previous games, or the high speed chase, those are kind of things that can be their own missions.
Yeah.
Because even though we've leaned a little bit grounded with this, I am not saying that we ignore the camp.
Of course. And the camp would be as much in the gameplay as in the interactions in scenes and stuff. I just think Cross's sort of camp is going to be different than a Bond sort of camp because he's not Bond.
His camp is less of the smarmy and more of black humor.
Yeah. For example, I could see him picking up someone's head after an explosion and being like, "No need to lose your head over this."
Mm-hmm. There is one really old Charlie Chaplin era gag that I would love to try and pull off. Um, that being the whole thing of walking out of a building, the whole thing explodes. The wall is about to come down, but you're just conveniently standing in the right hole, so it misses you.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard gag from the silent era.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Max Payne got away with it. Why can't we?
Yeah, and to be honest, unlike the rest who make it look like an accident, he would make it look deliberate.
Or the whole thing of him getting held up and saying, um, if you know what's good for you, you won't step forward. Then the guy steps forward, ends up stepping right on his mind, and he's like, told him.
I warned him.
And you can have those kind of interactions even with the lieutenants, where somebody's just appalled at one of his quote unquote jokes and acts as the straight man for it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, or if I'd say one I'd say one example is somebody go is somebody going, well, what if they bring more in the elevator? Oh, they're coming down. They're coming down in about 5 seconds. How do you know? Because I cut the elevator wires. Then right after that, you hear a loud bang as the elevator hits the floor.
I think he'd say something more like the lines of, "Because it's the express elevator,"
Mm-hmm.
and then, see,
Yeah, not necessarily. You and I have made it very clear over the years that we're not a big fan of the comic relief character as much
Mhm.
as we are the idea of comic relief.
Yeah,
And because a lot of people forget that sitcom is supposed to be short for situational comedy. In our case, the emphasis is situation. And there does need to be some degree of levity when you're dealing with serious situations like climbing the ranks of the criminal underworld.
mm.
In our case, the levity is is somewhat observational and very situational. Because it would be very tempting to take a more smarmy approach, but that's just gold. That would just be 007 in a different coat of paint.
Yeah,
Double Cross is not 007.
absolutely.
His whole thing is he is after he got burned, he had to rely on his wits, and that's gotten him this far. Essentially, getting thrown out has changed his approach.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not saying this approach is perfect, and there may be some stuff in here that couldn't work in the sixth generation, especially with the whole time issue.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
the
But we never said we were designing for the sixth gen anyway.
mhm. But the grand tragedy of Rogue Agent is that everything that worked against it, there is a there is an understandable reason for it working against it. I think you can add it to the list of why annual releases are a terrible idea. And
Yeah,
really the only time annual releases can ever work is when you're dealing with lower tech.
Mhm.
When you're de- I'd even say that by the fifth generation of gaming hardware, um, we were starting to see problems with the whole annual release thing.
Mhm.
It wasn't as bad as what we'd get in the 2010s, but the cracks were starting to show simply because when you have that massive technology shift and you've got to do things on an annual schedule, problems are going to ensue. And those problems are going
Yeah.
to get worse as the technology gets more and more complex.
Yes.
And for now, it's now when it comes, obviously there's the stigma when it comes to sports, but that's a whole other can of worms. But I w- the other thing that I will note is I know a lot of people give high praise to Rogue Agent for the fact that Christopher Lee reprised his role as Scaramanga. If I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't have used any of the original actors. I would have used sound-alikes.
Mhm.
If only because at the age that Lee was at, I'm not sure if he could. I'm not sure if he'd be able to pull off that same enthusiastic billionaire approach.
It'd be much more sedate.
hmm And I think it would be far better off to ha- to utilize somebody who could, even if it's not the original actor. I know that some hardcore fans would cry foul at that, but it's a case of seeing the bigger picture here.
Mhm.
And I think from what I've heard, there were plans on doing something like that when it came to the actual game, so I'm not that far off. And I know that for Vader's appearance in say the Force Awakens and Soul Calibur 4, James Earl Jones was not playing him,
Correct.
but somebody who could pull the voice off was. As far as the kind of voice actor who I'd get for our double cross, which I'm making it clear I would not have him be a silent protagonist. Um, honest, I'd prob I don't have a name in mind as far as who could do it, but I do have an idea on the kind of accent I would ask for in casting. Um, I'm thinking I'm thinking a more northern accent.
A more northern accent in English.
Yes.
Um, I hmm.
Not a still British, but I'd say more Manchester or Newcastle kind of accents.
I know what you're mentioning. I'm just
Not Scottish.
no. I know who would make it a good version for our double cross. Hold on. Uh, it's not exactly a northern accent, but what about where is he? Taron Egerton, who played Eggsy in The Kingsman.
That could work. The big reason that I'd go with a northern accent is because of the fact that um you look at a lot of the accents that you see with Bond throughout the years. It
Yeah, they're
is
mostly received pronunciation.
mostly received pronunciation or the kind of accents that you would see in the more highfalutin parts of London.
Yeah, they're posh received pronunciation
hmm
accents.
So going with a more grounded, a more common man kind kind of accent, especially since the northern areas are seen are looked at it as a outside kind of thing,
Hmm.
to the point where I've joked that in parts of Europe, the more north you go, the more equivalent to the south it gets. That's kind of what I'm drawing upon with the choice of a northern accent.
Hmm.
Uh, the sole reason I wouldn't go with say Scottish or Welsh or Irish is that's swinging it too far, where you end up having a accent that would be thick enough that you need subtitles.
They didn't need subtitles for Sean Connery.
No, but I think you know why I wanted to avoid Scottish.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Because it could when you're dealing with thick accents, they can easily
Well, I mean,
they can easily get Flanderized.
much like England, Scottish accents vary from region to region. There are those that are easier to understand around places like Edinburgh, Inverness, Glasgow, and then there's the Aberdeenians. We don't talk about the Aberdeenan accent. Everybody in Scotland makes fun of the Aberdeenan accent.
And well, when it comes to Wales, no. I
But
got friends in Wales. I love them to death, but they know.
you don't want Sea Dog VA playing Double Cross?
No.
Oh, come on, it's not even that bad. You can actually understand him all the time. He talks very well. But it's definitely not just an English accent. There's definitely a little bit of a Welsh brogue in it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe for a shit post if I ever get the budget to actually make Double Cross a character. Which note to self: talk to DWD Studios about making Double Cross as part of a module for Covert Ops.
Ha! Note to self, indeed.
Especially Covert Ops can be considered the spiritual successor to Top Secret SI.
Yeah.
Which is why I brought it up in this instance.
I understand.
And the thing now, with all that said, that is going to do it for this particular episode of GeekWatch. We will now here's a bit of mixed news. I am in the process of moving to a new place. So because of that, the next few weeks, my ability to do the podcasting and interviewing stuff is going to be a bit unpredictable. As a result, there will not be a Geek Watch next week. I'm putting Geek Watch and the like on hold until I have everything secured.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to take a few weeks. Now I'm still going. If everything goes as planned, this won't affect the scheduling for, say, the Parliament of Geeks, but be prepared in case it does. I don't think it's going to create that much of an issue, but it's always best to be prepared.
And it's probably going to also delay Valley of the Judge, correct?
Yes. It could.
Oh,
it
Sag.
I'm saying that it could.
I know, but I'm so looking forward to talking about the shooter.
So am I. Which is why I'm saying be cautious on the matter.
Yeah, understandable.
I will note, however, I will be making updates as I receive them on both my Twitter and on the announcements part of my Discord. So for those who want to find out when the next project will happen, or when we'll be back to the regularly scheduled stuff, that's where it's going to be. And once we are back, I will be doing some stuff to play a bit of catch up, because just because this kind of thing is going down doesn't mean I'm not paying attention to the news. The news that matters to me, obviously.
The news that I wish we could stop talking about, but holy shit, it just gets worse.
How do you think I feel? I've been at ground zero for this in my own way since day one.
I know.
Add it to the reasons why I drink. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.